This is the story of the secret armies, funded by the United States, trained by Britain, and left behind in post-war Europe to fight the rise of communism. This is also the story of how they turned against their own people.
This was the only bank in Milan that stayed open after 4 p.m. That day, at 4:30, I'd just signed a contract between two old farmers. A colleague called me, saying, "Come upstairs, I need you to give me some papers." When I arrived, I realized I had forgotten a receipt. I opened the window and tried to call these two people, but they couldn't hear me. So I closed the window and did quite an unusual thing. I leant against the glass.
At 4:37 p.m. on the 12th of December 1969, a bomb exploded at the headquarters of the National Agrarian Bank in Milan's Piazza Fontana.
It was an apocalyptic scene. Dead, injured, safe deposit boxes sprung open. I started to cry, "It's a bomb, it's a bomb," until someone from the police put their hand over my mouth and took me outside.
17 people were killed and 80 seriously wounded.
My little son Ignaz came home from his first day at school and asked me, "Dad, can we go to the Oktoberfest?" So I said, "Okay, let's go." They went on the ghost train, and my daughter, who was older than him, cried when she came out. So my son called her a scaredy cat. Later I bought them a balloon and started to head home. But when we were close to the exit, suddenly...
The bomb that exploded at the Munich Oktoberfest on the 26th of September 1980 killed 13 people and injured over 200.
When I regained consciousness, I started to look for my children. First I found my little boy. I asked him, "Are you okay?" He answered, "It's nothing, Dad. I just feel cold." So I turned around and went a little further to where my daughter was lying. Her whole body was torn open. She said to me, and I will never forget these words, "Dad, help me, will you?" Then she died. My son had 2 bomb fragments right through his head. So both of my children died. I just can't help wondering, why?
The dinner was ready and we were waiting for my daughter and my son-in-law and their 2 children. Saturday was our family day. All of a sudden I heard shooting from the Delhaize supermarket. We ran out to the terrace and my wife screamed, "My children." I said, "Calm down, I will have a look at what happened." The doors to the supermarket were wide open and a crowd was pushing out. I wanted to go in, against the tide, but people were saying don't. People have been shot in there. Then they told me that my whole family had been shot.
On the 9th of November 1985, a gang of armed men opened fire inside the Delhaize supermarket in Aalst, Belgium.
and there were 8 killed and 8 injured. Nobody understood. It was not classical gangsterism.
The slaying was just one of a staggering 16 similar attacks carried out between 1982 and 85 that came to be known as the Brabant massacres. In total, 28 people died and 20 were injured. To this day, the killers have never been identified. René de Witt believes that it must be in someone's best interests that they're never found.
If you discover the killers, you probably also discover other things.
Over a period of about 15 years, Europe was rocked by a series of terror attacks. The lives of thousands of people were turned upside down. But to this day, many aspects of the attacks remain a mystery. The bomb left in Milan's Piazza Fontana was one of the worst incidents, but 40 years on, no one has been convicted of the crime. Public prosecutor Guido Salvini, World War. They took seriously the old adage that the enemy of my enemy is my friend, even enlisting prominent Nazis to the anti-Soviet cause. One of them, the SS spy master Reinhard Gehlen, would become the founder of the first post-war German secret service, which would later oversee the country's stay-behind network. In the early years of the Cold War, no one did more than Gehlen to feed US fears of a growing Soviet menace. President Truman poured millions into a variety of covert operations and intelligence programs to counter the communist threat. America's National Security Act of 1947 provided the legal foundation for covert action and what was termed unorthodox warfare. The strategy was carefully outlined in the National Security Council Directive 10/2. It would greatly influence the way the American Secret Services operated.
NSC 10/2 says that all means must be used, including setting up secret armies, including manipulating the population with fear or propaganda, and that a lot of money must be poured into this.
The 1948 communist coup in Czechoslovakia, the Berlin blockade, and the outbreak of war in Korea did much to nurture American fears of a Soviet invasion in Europe. Suspicion spiraled on either side of the Iron Curtain. And behind the official face of NATO, the drive to organize and establish the secret stay-behind networks in Western Europe intensified. In the years after the Second World War, the communist parties in Western Europe made huge gains in popularity. Their relationship with their Soviet comrades was of great concern to the United States. At that time, Peter Sickle was head of the CIA office in Berlin.
You had a very strong Italian Communist Party, French Communist Party, so there was a sense of insecurity because we also knew that the Russians availed themselves of those communist parties for political action.
As the risk of a communist political victory increased, so the strategy of the stay-behind armies turned away from the threat of Soviet invasion towards the enemy within.
The most important document for a historian right now is dated June 1, 1959, and it's actually a document from the Italian military secret service, and it says that Gladio was set up on the one hand to become active in case of a Soviet invasion, and on the other hand in case of sovvertimenti interni, which means domestic unrest. I mean, we know from the 50s on that the secret armies had the twofold task.
Some of the earliest evidence of the role of NATO secret armies in domestic political subversion comes from a German scandal in the 1950s.
In 1952, we had a member of the German stay-behind network walking into the police station in Frankfurt and saying, "I am a member of a secret army. We are being trained by an American in how to kill people, how to leave no traces, how to hide in forest. We have arms, we have explosives, and we are actually secret."
Adenauer was incensed that things like that were being done by the Americans without his knowledge. And it was Not that I objected to it being done, but I would have been somewhat more careful in my choice of people.
The man who walked into the police station in 1952 was Hans Otto, a former SS officer. He had grown alarmed by the direction his stay-behind unit was taking. His testimony led to the discovery of a secret training center deep in the Hessen woods in central Germany. But what came as the biggest shock to investigators was that the paramilitaries seemed to have been handed a sinister political mission.
They had lists of people whom they wanted to kill, respected members of the community. And we always wonder, assassinated in case of a Soviet invasion or assassinated in case of a domestic change of power. And at that point, everybody thought there would be a very thorough investigation of the German stay-behind.
But no such investigation followed. After some deft diplomacy between the US and Germany, the 100 alleged conspirators, all right-wing extremists, were released. The case was quickly closed and forgotten until a new scandal hit the headlines 30 years later. Just one day after the Oktoberfest attack, the police discovered that the suspected bomber, Gundolf Köhler, who had died in the blast, was a member of the neo-Nazi paramilitary organization, Wehrsportsgruppe Hoffmann.
Gundolf Köhler was interested in weapons and explosives. He'd also been like that within the Wehrsportsgruppe Hoffmann. Immediately after the attack, the police searched his parents' house in Donaueschingen and found what they described as a bomb factory. But they only found chemicals suitable for homemade explosives. Yet it was discovered that high-grade military explosives had been used in the Munich attack. One has to ask oneself how he got hold of this kind of explosive.
In the days that followed the bombing, the police interrogated some of his comrades.
These people, during interrogation, said, "We had our weapons and the explosives from another right-wing extremist, and his name is Heinz Lemke." And the funny thing is, this was never investigated.
Guten Abend, meine Damen und Herren. Das Ausmaß der von Rechtsextremisten angelegten Waffenlager.
In 1981, a year after the Oktoberfest bomb, hikers stumbled upon a huge arms cache deep in the Lüneburg woods of northern Germany. It belonged to forest ranger Heinz Lemke. Lemke was a right-wing activist with extensive contacts in the German neo-Nazi scene. It was later revealed that the East German Secret Service, the Stasi, had pinpointed the exact location of transmitters used by the West German stay-behind groups. One of them was traced to Lüneburg, very close to Lemke's home and the sites where the hidden weapons were found.
Weapons caches such as these were in the remit of a European strategy. That much is proven. But if you were then to investigate how much Lemke had to do with all this, to what extent he had weapons and explosives at his disposal, and to what extent these were similar or identical to the explosives used in the Oktoberfest attack, such an investigation would yield results.
After his arrest, Lemke told investigators about the existence of a further 30 arms caches. He also said he was prepared to reveal his backers. But before he could deliver his testimony, he was found dead, hanging from the ceiling of his prison cell. His death provides a chilling link to the Brabant killings in Belgium. Evidence there also points to a link with a paramilitary organization. Police Commissioner Eddie Voss has been investigating the Brabant killings for many years.
We found out that there was a specific modus operandi, and that each